black thing go from left to right, and I thought, I'm going to die out here. No one's ever going to know. I couldn't believe what my eyeballs were showing me. I'll never forget how evil the eyes were. It was horrible. I mean, I've never seen nothing that evil.
It ran towards me at a rate that I can't even explain. Turned and stared at me, and this look of, I just want to kill you. I want to say it was human, but it wasn't.
He was yelling at me to grab a gun. I was like, for what? He said, just grab a gun. And there's footprints all the way to the door of my house. It had went inside my garage all the way to the door.
911, what are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Zio!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
You're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. Check us out online at sasquatchchronicles.com. If you've had an encounter, email me. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. Going to be talking to Miguel. And Miguel actually ran into two of these creatures. One he got a really good look at, but he was 11 years old. He was helping family move, and as you and I know, I mean, an 11-year-old kid really doesn't do a whole lot as far as helping someone move. So Miguel would take off on his mountain bike and ride around in the backcountry. And one day he actually ran into one of these creatures and a second one stepped out. But it's really fascinating to hear Miguel tell the encounter. We all hear about the Ron Moorhead sounds, the mumbling in the forest. And Miguel talks a little bit about that. But when he actually ran into this creature, he talks about this mouth pop clicking sound it made. And that always fascinates me because I think of there's tribes in Africa and some of these third world countries where they'll talk, but it's mouth pops and it's clicks. And it reminds me a lot of what Miguel was talking about. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, check out the website, sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member, get additional shows, a lot of cool things on the site. So I hope you get a chance to check it out. Let's actually jump into it. Miguel, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, no problem, Wes. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being here, man. I'm really excited to talk with you. If you would you kind of start from the very beginning and walk us into this encounter?
All right, so I live in Virginia, but I was in Wyoming for about a week and a half because my grandmother, who's about 97 now, lived out there in Landau, Wyoming by herself. And me, my stepmother, my cousin were out there trying to move her stuff, like move her back to Virginia because she couldn't live by herself anymore. And we were out there for about a week and a half. And we get there, and one thing about me is I love animals, like dogs, cats. I've seen bears, like elk, moose, deer, any animal you can think of that doesn't live in Africa. But I've seen so many animals. I just love just being out in the wilderness. I'm always in the forest. And we got there, and she was in a very small house, one story. So my cousin, my stepmom didn't really need my help really throughout the week. And in my grandmother's garage, she had not like an old bike, just like a regular mountain bike. And there's bike trails around Lander leading up to Shoshone National Forest. And every day I would just go out and just ride. Like I would leave the house at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, and wouldn't come back till about 7 p.m. I'd just be out just enjoying the forest by myself. And there's this, not per se lake, but like this creek bed on one of the trails that I would ride on every single day. And it wasn't like my spot, but I'd go out there. A nice place to be. There's lots of deer around. You can just like chill and just hang out. And I'll go up there every single day, every day, for about a week. And every day I go up there, I'd see deer all the time, birds chirping. And this one particular day, something just didn't seem right. I mean, I always got this feeling being out there that someone was watching me. Always had that feeling, but this was back in 2010. I was about 11 years old at the time, and I wasn't. Knowing what I know now about Sasquatch, I didn't even come close to thinking about it at the time. So this one particular day, I'm riding, and I keep 2 water bottles on the bike, one on the front by the handlebars and one under my seat. And this one day I'm riding, and just the forest just seemed, just seemed dead. Like I didn't hear birds chirping like I normally do, and I only saw like one deer that day. It just felt like an off day. And I'm riding, and I'm not at the creek bed yet, but I'm like almost there. And I just got tired. I wanted to take a little break, and I just stopped my bike and thought I'd grab some water from a water bottle. And the second I do that, I started hearing sounds like children playing in the forest. And usually when I'm out there, there's never kids out there riding their bikes. I mean, usually just older people, but I rarely would see people out there on the trail. I'd never see people. I mean, I might see a few, maybe 1 or 2, but that's it. And just the sound of hearing children playing in the forest it didn't sound right to me. I mean, because one, I wasn't at the creek bed yet, and it was coming from that direction. I thought, okay, maybe there's kids over there with their parents, maybe. But I heard it, but it was off the side of me, and it quickly turned from kids playing, and the sound, it sounded like just people talking in the woods, just murmuring, like you could tell someone was talking, but you can't make out what they're trying to say. I'm not sure how to describe this, but you know how you have a screen door in the back of your house that leads out to your back porch or backyard, and you can close it so that bugs can't get in, but you can still hear what's going on outside. It sounded like I was outside and the screen door was closed, but I could hear people in the house talking, but I couldn't tell what they were saying. They were just murmuring. And at this point, that's when I really started getting scared. Just talking about this just gives me the chills. I'm shaking right now. Forgive me.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
But I'm there, and off to my right, not to my right, but in front of me to the right, northeast of me, I'm on the trail, and I hear something coming through the forest. I first thought, okay, maybe it's deer, but then it starts getting closer, and I've heard bears before, but it didn't sound like a bear, because bears, you could tell that this thing was on 2 feet. It was a thud, just walking through the forest. And at this point, I'm just okay, it's probably just someone walking. But at that point, because people don't walk off the trail. I mean, because when I get off my bike and hang out by the creek bed, it's not off the trail. It's right on the trail. Because people don't walk in that thick brush that's close to the trail. It just you just don't. It's too hard to get through that stuff. So I'm thinking, okay, who's walking through the forest? And plus, they weren't just regular footsteps. They're heavy footfalls coming from the brush. And at this point, it's getting closer, and I'm just stuck because I'm curious to what it is. And this thing just takes 2 big steps on the trail. Mind you, this trail is about 25, 30 feet wide, because it's enough room for people to go back and forth on it and not run into each other. And this thing steps out, and God, it was just massive. I mean, my first thought, okay, maybe it's a bear, but I've seen bears before, and bears don't walk on their hind legs. I mean, I've seen bears before, hobble on their hind legs before, but bears don't walk with a stride. So that was my first thought. Okay, this isn't a bear. What is this? And it steps out on the trail, and it wasn't looking at me. It was kind of facing the way it was going. And my second thought was, okay, what's a guy in a gorilla suit doing out here in the forest? That just doesn't make any sense to me. And mind you, I'm 11 years old, so I'm thinking this in my head, but I'm not like processing it yet. And I'm just looking at it, and it wasn't what I would expect to be in the forest. I mean, and plus, if it was a person in the suit, that hair had to have been glued on to that person. And even so, if it was glued on, like I've worn suits before for plays. I've worn like suits, and like you can't get that kind of bend in a suit, and you can't see the person's skin under the suit. And then that's when it turned and looked at me. And mind you, it didn't turn its head and look at me. It turned its whole like upper body to look at me. And at this point, I'm just frozen. I don't know what to do. It was incredible what I was seeing. And I was about 35 yards away from it. So I can clearly see what it is. And it had just black matted hair just all over it. But it didn't have like hair over its face, on its face. And like I could clearly see like the facial details, like deep brow ridges. Its eyes were just black, and its nose. I mean, it had a human nose, but it wasn't like ours. It was like just like wider, like just a lot wider than ours. Its lips, its mouth was just huge. Like just see how wide its mouth was, and like it didn't have like human lips, but like it had thin lips, but like you couldn't really tell if it had lips or not because they were that thin. And I'm just looking at this thing. I'm just like, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. This thing was just massive. It had to be, wow. I'd put it at 9 foot, maybe 4 feet across the chest. Just big barrel chest. I could tell it was a male. It was incredible. And I'm still frozen. I don't know what to do. And it's looking at me, and it starts making this not clicking noise, but like popping noise. You know, you put your like tongue to the top of your throat like that.
Yeah. That
type of thing. It was just weird. I've never heard an animal do that before, and it started doing that. It was very quick. It wasn't like it was prolonged clicking, but I could tell it was like trying to do something, or I don't know if it's trying to communicate with me. But once it finished doing the little popping noise to my left, where it was facing when it first came out of the tree line, I heard like the same type of popping noise, but like it had like a little like yell to it, like a popping yell to it to the left side. And at that point, I'm just like, okay, I need to get up out of here now. And I slowly start turning my bike around. And once I start moving, the one in front of me starts growling. And this growl, it wasn't like a roar, but it was like, one of those like, you don't need to be here, you need to get out of here now type of growls. I could feel the growl in my chest. Like it was very guttural. It was crazy. At that point, I'm trying to move a little bit faster, like getting my bike back across the trail. I'm starting to go back, and then I hear like off to where the second popping noise came from. I hear like movement in the forest, and I could see an outline of another one, black fur, same thing, but I can only see like the chest, about the collarbone, head. That's it. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, okay, wow, I need to get out of here. And before I start taking off, because you don't turn your back to the predator. You don't do that, because then it's gonna start chasing you. And I thought that if I had turned around and started going at that point, being 30 yards away, it would have had me. So I tried to move as slow as I could to put some more distance between me and the black figures, whatever I could. And the second one, it stands up in the brush, and that one was bigger than the first one. So it had to be, I say maybe a head above the first one. It had to be about 10 feet tall. Had to be. And at that point, once it stands up, I get on my bike and I go. I ride about maybe 2.5 miles back to the house, and I didn't even put my bike in the garage. Once I hit the driveway, I just threw it down, ran to the house, and I told my mom, my cousin, what just happened, and they looked at me like, okay, you probably saw a bear. Like, they're kind of laughing at me, actually. It's frustrating trying to. I've only told a story 3 times. This the third time I told a story, and I don't know. That's
a terrifying account, man. Especially being a young man and then seeing these things. I wanted to ask you, did it appear to be more human-like, the one that you got a really good look at, and did its facial expression change at all? I know when you moved, it growled at you. But
yeah, like you know how I said, like, I thought it was a person in a suit. Like, it couldn't be because you could see its face moving. Like it showed teeth. I forgot to mention that, and the teeth were like, I was too far away. I couldn't see like canines or whatever, but the teeth looked square. It had, the only thing human about it was it walked upright and had limbs like ours. The arms were just insanely long. Like and plus it wasn't like standing straight up. It was like kind of hunched over, but you could tell the arms were long. And it looked human, but it had some gorilla in it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it wasn't quite human, wasn't quite animal. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like right in the middle. Like, it had some gorilla in it, or chimpanzee. I don't one of those two, but it had some human in it. It's like a humanoid gorilla, if you will.
Yeah, that's what a lot of witnesses say when they see it, and I can kind of see why they say that. Even people get a good look at the face. They'll say it wasn't human and it really was an animal. It was somewhere in between. And I hear that. It's very common for a lot of witnesses to say. What do you think it was doing? Do you think it stepped out and kind of was like, oh, crap, someone's there?
To be honest with you, I don't know what it was doing. I mean, knowing what I know now, knowing what I know now about Sasquatch, maybe it was, I don't know what it was doing. Maybe trying to find its buddy or something. But like I said, I only saw one deer that day, and I don't know what they were doing. And to be honest with you, I want to say, I know I heard two, I heard two, and I saw two, but knowing what I know now, there probably could have been more with them. Because when people see him, I know there's always like not like a family member or a buddy nearby. So there's probably more, but I saw two, but I don't know what they were doing.
Did you get the impression they were communicating back and forth? They were actually talking back and forth?
Oh yeah. When the first one started doing that popping noise and that popping like type noise, and the other one's doing the same thing, they had to be communicating. Had to be.
Yeah, it's a fascinating account. So you rode away, and that was pretty much the end of that.
That was the end of that. I mean, to be honest with you, I know, like, have you ridden a bike trail before, or riding a mountain bike through the forest before?
Yeah, of course.
You know how, like, when you're riding your bike through the forest and, like, it's kind of, like, bumpy?
Yeah.
When I was riding away, it felt like the ground was vibrating more than it should be. And I did look back one time, and when I looked back, both of them were standing on the trail where I had stopped to get some water. And after that, I didn't look after that, and it just felt like the ground was kind of vibrating, like more than it should be when you ride your bike through the forest. I don't know if they were chasing me. I don't know, because I didn't look back after that. I just kept going. I didn't want to look back because I just didn't want to. I felt like if I looked back, I might have, like, not watched where I was going. Maybe like fell or something. They would have had me. I don't know, but I just kept going.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It makes me wonder if because of your age, they didn't really see you as a major threat. You know, being a 11-year-old kid, you're not
exactly. Because knowing what I know now, like, I know I've read stories about hunters like how they've encountered these things and they get like really riled up because they see that they have a gun on them. But knowing that I was a child, basically, I mean, I'm 19 now. I'm a pretty good sized man, about 6'4", 220, and these things towered over me. But being a 11-year-old kid, 10-year-old kid, being about 5'5", they probably didn't see me as a threat. And plus, I always had that feeling of something watching me every time I would go to the creek bed. So they were probably watching me throughout that whole week, and they probably saw that I wasn't like doing anything to harm anything. I was just hanging out, just being me. I mean, I don't know what they were doing. I mean, they could have been hunting, because I know there's plenty of deer in that area. I see them every single day, but that day I only saw one deer that day. But I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah, the whole thing is fascinating to me, especially their reaction, because you hear that a lot of times with hunters. A lot of times if they reach for their gun or they start making a movement, these creatures will react with growling at you. You know, they don't like you getting up and making a movement, even though you weren't going for a weapon. You were trying to turn your bike around.
Yeah, it didn't start growling until I like started turning my bike around. So I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes they don't react that way. You know, I had an encounter back, a couple of years ago. It was a police report I was looking into, and it was this 10-year-old kid riding down, I think it was in California. He was riding down, maybe it was California, I'll have to go back and look. But anyway, he was riding on his bike, and he said a gorilla chased him. And what ended up happening is he's riding as fast as he can. He said this gorilla took off on all fours after him. And I can't remember, he had something on his bike. I don't remember if it was like cards or something, you know, to create that motorcycle sound, that click, 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 click as you go down the road. Anyway,
Yeah.
it had grabbed the back tire, and he went over the top of the handlebars, and it took his bike and it bent it in half and threw it up in a tree. He took off running home. And the fascinating part is I actually talked to the cop that investigated it, and the cop went out there, talked to this little kid, and he said, what was it? Was it a bear? He said, no, it was a gorilla. Gorilla chased him. And it was, as the cop said, it was the largest gorilla he'd ever heard of, but it chased this kid down, and they thought the kid was full of crap. Well, they go out to where he said it snagged him off the bike, and they found his bike. It was like 20 feet up in a tree, and it was bent in half. A mountain bike completely bent in half, thrown up in this tree. Then there was no explanation for it. You know what I mean? Like, a bear's not going to grab you off your bike, bend your bike, throw it up in a tree, and let you go.
Exactly. Bears don't have the capability to even throw even a rock.
Right.
They tried.
Right. And you hear a lot of hunters saying, well, I think a bear was throwing rocks at me one night. And it's like, you're a hunter. Does that make sense to you? Does that add up in your head that a bear was throwing rocks at you? And a lot of times when you question those hunters, they'll stop and go, yeah, that doesn't make sense. But I think as humans, we try and, come up with the best explanation that makes the most sense. And in your situation, the other thing, too, I want to ask you is, so when you're riding away and you stop and you look back, and I realize you're at a greater distance now, beyond being taller, did the second one look any different from the first one that stepped out?
The only thing different about the second one was about maybe a head taller than the first one. But they both had black fur. But to be honest with you, the second one, I know it was in the brush, like on its right side. It had like, I want to say it was mud, maybe, because it was kind of wet that day. But I don't know if it was mud or just the sun was shining on that side. Cause it looked like it was maybe had been laying down in the creek bed on its right side, maybe. I don't know, but that's the only difference between the first one and the second one.
Yeah, it's an odd account. It really is. I'm surprised that especially with the way they reacted, I'm surprised it didn't. So when it was popping its tongue, it wasn't directed at you by any means. You're saying it was directed at the second one that you eventually saw.
Oh, yeah. It was, yes. It wasn't, because when it stepped out, like before it turned its whole body, like it was kind of making that noise, but it wasn't as like loud. But it turned to me, it was still making the noise when it looked at me. But after he had finished, like immediately right after that, the second one was making the noise too. That's why I thought they were communicating.
Can you talk about the facial expression changing when it first stepped out and looked at you? How did it change during that whole experience?
It didn't expect me to be there. That's the kind of facial expression it had on its face. Its eyes were just wide-eyed. Plus they were like black too. And like I said, it did show teeth at one point, but not like, you could just see its face grimacing. That's why I knew it wasn't a person in a suit, because you can't do that if you're wearing a suit.
So kind of a surprised look, and then kind of an angry,
yeah,
what are you doing? Where are you going?
Like a surprised look, but then like went from surprise to like, why are you here? You shouldn't be here, type of thing. But I'm just glad that it was as far away as it was, and I'm just glad that I was moving slow enough away to where when I really started to get out of there, that it was away. I mean, I thought they were going to chase me, but I mean, they might have, because like I said, the ground felt like it was vibrating a little bit, and after I looked the first time, I didn't look back until I hit town. I did feel the ground like kind of stop vibrating after I got maybe a mile out. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's odd. I hear a lot of witnesses talk about that too as well. A lot of hunters will describe that. You know, it's kind of like the jolly green giants coming through the forest, coming for you, and the ground kind of vibrates.
You can't. I can't even describe how big these things are. It's like knowing what I know now. It's like you gotta be there to see how big they are. It's incredible how big they are.
How did this affect you? I mean, you go back, you tell your parents and your mom and everything, and everyone's kind of laughing at you. But how did it affect you after this?
I'll tell you this. It just, I didn't leave the house that whole week, because we were there about like around this time of year. We were there through 4th of July around that time. And once the clock hit about 6 p.m. and the sun started going down, I did not go outside. I never went back out in the forest unless I was with somebody. I never went to that trail again while we were there. And my whole mood that whole week and a half just changed. I was just so afraid of being outside. I mean, and plus even when I got home, I didn't tell you this. When I got home after that trip, I immediately went to the computer and I typed in what I saw in Google, and what came up was the Patterson film Sasquatch, Patty. I think that's what they call her.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I was like, yo, that's pretty much what I saw, but it wasn't female.
Yeah, it's life-changing to run into these things. And, you know, it hurts. I was just telling other witnesses, you know, it hurts when family doesn't believe you. When someone you don't know doesn't believe you, it's like, well, who cares? But when it's family, it hurts even more, man. It really hurts when they don't believe it. Especially this, you know, it's terrifying. You know, I'm a big man, and what I ran into was very quick what you described, and I felt like a flea on a dog's back when I ran into it. I can imagine being 11 years old. And just the fear of, when you talk about the size, you're right. It's
unreal.
It's very unreal. Yeah. Especially since we can't catch up with them. Something that large should not be able to hide as well as it hides in the forest. You'd think we'd be running into them left and right all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I don't, like, even when I got home, like, it did change me a lot, because like when I got home, I never knew what a Sasquatch was until like I got home. After that, I started like going online, reading different articles. Like I used to watch Monster Quest all the time. Like I know that Finding Bigfoot show with Cliff and all them. I mean, I watched that show for the witnesses. I mean, it's not that exciting, but I mean, like Mountain Men. Like I was just so fascinated about it. Like I know I was on YouTube one time. I watched like Thinker Thunker all the time. I know Steve White has his strange but true stories. I watch those from time to time. I also stumbled upon Dr. Lloyd Pye's Everything You Know Is Wrong presentation. I even bought his book off Amazon. I read that about human origins, about that too.
He definitely has a fascinating take on it, doesn't he, Lloyd Pye?
He does. I mean, and everything he said, it kind of makes sense to me. But I'm not an atheist, but I mean, I believe in the Bible. But after seeing what I've seen in the forest, it makes me question what's really going on.
It really does. What do you think Sasquatch is, Miguel? I mean, you got to really look at two of them. If someone were to ask you, let's say the term Bigfoot doesn't exist, no one knows what you're talking about when you say Sasquatch. How would you describe to someone what you saw?
To describe it without using Bigfoot as a context, I'd honestly say it's a pre-human. Like, I know I've read and heard like Native Americans that have ancestors that have lived on the land that they have sightings in, and they talk about them like they're just a normal tribe of people that just live out in the forest. So that's kind of what I think it is. I mean, also what I've heard from Lloyd Pye about how I know, like, if you look at the fossil record, I know like Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, Homo erectus, they all lived on the planet like at least side by side for at least 100,000 years. And knowing us, Homo sapiens, I mean, we're like two-legged hyenas. We can take down a species if we want to. But Neanderthals, like, just knowing them by themselves, they can take on a lion head on and be fine. But I feel like when we came along, they figured out, okay, these guys are bad news, you know, in packs. So, like, let's just move away. And I feel like maybe they didn't go extinct when we think they did, and we just like drove them to places that we don't go, which is like, you know, the British Columbia, Vancouver Island, like the upper montane forest that we have. Plus they're not just in North America too. Like, they have the Yeti that lives exclusively in the Himalayan mountain ranges, the Almas and the Ogaglis that live in South America, the Indonesian mountains. They have those too. So it's not like it's just over here. And it just makes me wonder that there were 4 types of pre-humans that came before Homo sapiens, and that there's 4 different type of hominoids that live on this planet. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, you've done your research. I'm impressed. It is, and you're right. There is a lot of hominids that that most people don't realize were on the planet at one time. And you can go look at the skulls of these things, and you're like, okay, that's not human. That's not human. That's not human. Yeah. And so it is fascinating to speculate, you know, as far as what they are. It's fascinating. Whenever you talk to an eyewitness, I would say most of the time, people will say it's an animal. And then when you really start questioning them, you know, on the face and the eyes, and, you know, a lot of times people say, well, it's somewhere between a human and an animal. I don't know what else to tell you beyond that. But it is interesting when you start looking at some of the other hominids that you described. They were on the planet the same time we were. And it kind of makes you wonder, I mean, what is this thing? What is this thing that, you know, that lived at one time? And, you know, you can look at the skulls of a lot of those other hominids, and you're right, they do appear to be human-like, but just on a larger scale. And I like the fact that you've done your research, because you're right, we as humans are a pack animal. We're not a super predator. We're a pack animal. We hunt in packs, and it's kind of like coyotes. Exactly. You can kill a coyote. Good luck trying to kill 30 of them coming at you, because you're not going to win that fight. And the Sasquatch appears to be more of a super predator. I think they are somewhat of a pack animal, but I think I would classify them more as a super predator, because there's not much that can stand toe to toe with them. Yeah.
And I know people always tell me, like, I told my friend, like, I told him one time, like, because we're in a car. I listened to one of your podcasts in the car last night, going to my games, and he was like, dude, this is so stupid. I don't know how you believe in this stuff. I'm like, dude, I see one myself. Don't question me. He's like, bro, no, you haven't. Like, he's like, dude, we have pictures of bears, all this stuff. Why can't we find a Sasquatch? I was like, dude, like, it's just, you just don't understand. I told him, like, I made a valid point to him last night. I was like, you know how long it took us for us to find a panda bear? He was like, oh, how long? I was like, it took us about 60 years to find a panda bear. Where I'm going with that is, like, story coming out of China about this black and white bear that only ate bamboo. And every PhD in North America was like, well, we know about brown bears, black bears, and white bears. There's no black and white bear that eats bamboo. And until people go over there to Providence, China, and see the hides of one on the market or whatever, okay, maybe they're real. And it's not until when Roosevelt and they go over there and they kill one, everybody's like, oh, wow, a panda bear. And if you think about it, if you go out and try to find a panda bear, it's difficult to just go out there and find one. And they're a panda bear. I mean, you've seen them in zoos before. They're not. I'm not gonna be rude that they're dumb animals, but I mean they're just nonchalant animals. They're just hanging around, get stuck in trees, can't even mate in zoos, can't even find each other, honestly. But think about that. It took them 60 years to find a panda bear, but a Sasquatch is different. It's 6 to 10 feet tall, can move faster than we can, think better than we can, operates at night, 24/7, eats anything, just incredible.
I agree. And I tend to agree with, I'm easy on skeptics because I think your friend has a valid point. And I completely get where he's coming from. I get it. And I always talk to hunters and they say, well, I've been hunting my whole life. I've never seen one. I get it. I completely get it. I don't have an argument for you on it. I hunted my whole life and never saw anything. And the one day I'm out doing nothing, I run into them, and I've hunted that whole area. You never coming across them by accident. It's never like on purpose. It's always by accident. And I mean, like, I know like hunters, they say I hunted all my whole life, but like, it's just when people like my friend, like he's lived in Virginia his whole life. Like we think we live everywhere, but we don't live everywhere. And plus, Sasquatch, yes, they're big, and people are like, okay, if it's so big, we should be able to find it, right? But the thing is, they don't just stay in one area. Like, they follow the food. They follow what's gonna keep them alive. Like, I've heard like reports about them using the Appalachian Mountains as a highway to get between eastern states. Like, I know, like British Columbia, all them where there's very dense forests. Like, they're all up there because they got plenty of places to hide, and plus there's plenty of food around. Water sources, but it's just you have to think about a bear isn't trying to stay away from humans. Bears just do wherever they can or whatever, but Sasquatch, they're a lot smarter than we think they are. And if you think about it, they're like adapted to this planet. Like I remember I heard one of your podcasts last night about some guy was talking about this lady was telling him that what's his name? Anthony, I think. I heard his story about how the lady was taking care of the Bigfoots or whatever at her house or whatever. Yeah. I heard about that. Yeah.
He was talking about how she told him about how the adults would leave and go hunt 50 miles off where they stay in one night. Like, they can move when they want to.
Yeah, I agree. They're hard to catch up with. It makes me raise an eyebrow a little bit on how hard it is to catch up with them. And I've mentioned this on the Confessionals when I did the Think Tank podcast. It's fascinating when you look at, you mentioned the Yeti, you mentioned the Almas in Russia, you mentioned the
Ogagwis.
Yeah, in China they call it the urine. In Australia they call it what do they call it in Australia?
The orang pendek?
No.
No, that's not.
It's going to drive me nuts. Yowie, that's it. They call it the yowie. And so when you look at the whole picture, you're like, okay, no one's caught up with this thing. We haven't caught up, in Australia. And in Australia it's a little bit different. I don't think you can actually carry a firearm out in the woods. Canada's kind of the same way. They're so strict on guns. But, the United States and some of these other places, you would think someone would have dragged one out by now, but it makes you raise an eyebrow a little bit, or at least someone found one dead or someone hit one by their car. But when you hear those stories, you always hear some weird cover up with those stories. But with your friend, again, I'm cool with skeptics. I really am. I get it. I completely understand.
I am too, but
But in the same breath, when you see something, it's like, hey, I've seen it. I don't have an answer for you. And when you start looking at the evidence of Sasquatch, like the footprints, some of the blurry pictures, the Patterson-Gimlin film, the sounds that have been recorded, eyewitness testimony, people are seeing something. You know, even for a skeptic, you got to stop and say, people are seeing something. I don't know what it is, but people are seeing something. Yeah. And it's sure strange through Miguel's encounter, Wes's encounter, all the cops I've had, everyone kind of describes the same thing. No one's really too far off. No one's describing a pink Sasquatch riding a unicorn through the forest. You know, everyone's
saying. Like, it baffles me that I've heard or read stories that come over all across North America, and the only really, really difference is the hair color. But all the facial features and, like, size are the same. That's what gets me.
Yeah, they are slight differences, but I would say for the most part, you're right. People are really describing the same thing and a lot of the same behavior. You know, the mouth popping you talked about, I've heard that a million times from hunters and from people out hiking and people who've had these things on their property. They will describe this mouth pop. And you wouldn't think
you heard the... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and you would think that's not really a language until you look at some of these African tribes and some of these people who haven't or are kind of outside of civilization. And I can pull up videos and show you, and you'll see where humans are communicating with mouth pops and clicks, and it makes no sense. And it's weird that you hear that with Sasquatch because you'll hear the mouth pops, you'll hear the clicks, you'll hear strange language. What you described in the beginning where it sounds like people are talking, you can't quite make out what they're saying, but it's obvious.
Yes.
You'll hear a lot of that. And that's a little bit farther than just an animal, in my opinion. There's something else going on there.
It's just weird. Like I know I've heard I forget what they're called, the Sierra Moorhead sounds.
Yeah.
I think I heard those on a documentary one time. And it baffles me that it sounded just like that, but like it was kind of, I want to say not, it was a little bit quieter than that, but it sounds just so much like that. It's just weird. Like plus that's Sierra Mountains down in Nevada, not like in Wyoming. That's states apart.
Yeah, and you'll hear that people in Texas will describe it. I mean, I've heard it all over the United States. But going back to that, I had Scott, someone sent me an email and they said, you should have Scott Nelson on your show and Ron Moorhead to describe the language. Well, I've already had them on, and it's fascinating because here you have Scott's a career military guy. He was a cryptolinguist, worked in intelligence, and he analyzed them. Wow. Now, he has nothing to gain by saying there's something to this. He has absolutely everything to lose and nothing to gain by it. And he reviewed all the audio. I mean, probably thousands of hours. I'll have to go back and listen to that show, but I know Scott spent months and months just analyzing it. And he came to the conclusion, there's a language here. They're talking back and forth. He goes, I don't know what the language is, and he kind of describes how he knows it's a language, and it made sense to me what he was saying. But he said in those Sierra sounds, you can hear, there's absolutely a language going on. There's a conversation going on here. And that's odd.
It's weird. It's like yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Miguel.
It's weird. It's like it's not like how, let's say you and I do it. Like it's not like that. It's like, it's so quick. It's like each click is like different, and they can tell what they're saying. It's just weird. It's just hard. It's just so hard to describe. And like the way it was doing it, it was so fluid. It was like, and then like on the other side, you hear the same thing, maybe a different tone, a little bit louder. And plus, when it came from the forest, like it had like a yell / click to it. So it's just weird. I don't understand that.
Yeah, and it's fascinating you say that because Anthony, the guy I had on, he said the same thing. He said every click was different. It wasn't just like a pop, 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 pop. He said every one of them almost sounded a little different, and it sounded like, he goes, even though it was clicks and pops, it sounded like some weird language that they were talking back and forth. And I know in that particular incident, he even said the old woman kind of talked to them that way. But it wasn't just mouth pops and clicks. He would hear them talk in some weird language. he's never seen before. And that's the part that makes me really stop and go, Sasquatch has to be something else. I don't believe it's human. I hate to break it to everyone. I don't believe it's human, but I'm not so sure it's an animal either. I don't really know what this thing is, but every animal on the planet.
I don't want to. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Miguel.
I don't want to say. They say we evolved from chimpanzees, and this thing's part chimp or whatever. Chimpanzees, they can't modulate. They can't say words, and they can't like talk. I mean, I know Coco, they did sign language with her or whatever, but I've never heard this kind of clicking and like murmuring before. It's weird. I mean, I've heard chimps in the zoo kind of, make noises or whatever, but they're not this like sophisticated from what I heard from these things.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think they are. I think when you watch Coco, it's pretty amazing. I remember the first time I saw Coco do the, and Coco just passed away. I posted that up on the blog, but first time I had seen Coco, and it shocked me. It made me really stop and go, what makes us human? Really, what makes us human? Because here's Coco. I remember, and I talked about this on the blog. She was trying to break out of, and for the audience listening who doesn't know who Coco is, there was a gorilla. They trained it to speak sign language, as Miguel was talking about.
With Jane Goodall.
Yeah, well, not Jane Goodall. It was her name was Penny.
Was that her? No, someone else.
Yeah, it was Penny who raised this thing. And what's interesting, this ape. And what's interesting is when you, first time I ever saw Coco, she was trying to break out of this is like back in the 70s. She was trying to break out of her enclosure. And her enclosure is basically a room. And she was trying to go out the window. And they stopped her and they asked her, what are you doing? Well, the lady who was a caretaker, I believe her name was Penny, she said that she knew that Coco was trying to break out. So she really questioned her on what she's doing. Well, what the humans would do is they would go out and have a smoke. And they would smoke outside of this enclosure. They'd come in, talk to Coco, and then go out and have a smoke. And Coco signed back, I was just going out for a smoke. And it made me really stop and go, what makes us human? I mean, here's an ape. And Coco talked about her parents being killed by humans. She talked about all sorts of things through sign language.
Crazy.
So if you could get an ape to talk, the problem is that there's not an ape out there that talks like that. And so what is Sasquatch? You know what I mean? And Sasquatch seems to have the same. If you ever watch those with Coco, Coco's very intelligent in what she says on a lot of things. And she would make up her own words for different things. Like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She had some weird, she would call it peanut butter and berries or something like. She wanted peanut butter and berries, which means she wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it makes you wonder, how smart is Sasquatch and what is Sasquatch? But it's just fascinating. You know what I mean? I don't mean to ramble
Did I mention the movement of it?
No.
Did I? I was kind of shaken up. I couldn't. It's so hard telling that story without being like the chills. But like I said, the trail is, what did I say, about 30 feet. I can't, like, it's wide enough for people to go back and forth without, like, touching her. And this thing, when it stepped out, it took a few steps, and just the way it moved, like, Wes, you and I, when humans walk, you know how we walk, like, heel toe, you know what I'm talking about?
Right, yeah.
Just, like, so short stride. But this thing, it had, like, a gait to it, but every step it took, like the few steps that it took, its heel never hit the ground like we do. Like when it stepped, like it was so like flat right in the middle of its foot, just like that. It just is, I don't know, the gait, it just seemed weird, but yet it was fluent. And like when I said I thought it was a person in a suit, but you could tell this thing was in its natural habitat. Like you could tell that it lived there. Like when you see like an animal out in the woods, you can tell that it lives there because it has a fluent motion when it walks around. That's another reason why I knew it wasn't a person in a suit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's first reaction is, oh, that's a person in the suit. But I think once you, that feeling goes away after about 2 seconds of seeing these things. And the gait is very odd. It's, when we walk, we plant our foot, we put all our weight on our front foot, and then we let off on the back foot. Well, these things, when they land, they pull. And so it's almost like a forward moonwalk or like someone on cross-country skis, because when they plant their foot, they actually pull what appears to be, they pull their weight and everything with that foot. And it's just a real strange.
It is weird.
Yeah, it is weird. It is weird.
The reason why I say like it might be a pre-human, because our joints wear out as we get older. And I don't know how long these things live, but I mean, like, I've heard accounts about them looking like old, but still moving like very fast. Like, I mean, like I know how I said, like they're adapted to the planet. Maybe they are pre-humans, because if we're walking this way and our joints wear out by age 70, and these things are living longer, not longer, but as long as we are and still moving like that through the forest, it makes you wonder, like, this is their land. Like, they know what's going on around here.
No, it's hard to say, and you're right. Even the older ones, when people see the older ones, they'll still say it moved like nothing they'd seen before, but they could tell it was old. So it is fascinating when you hear eyewitnesses talk about that.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is. And they're definitely out there. It's one of those things to where it's almost like you have to see it to believe it. And I get that from eyewitnesses or from skeptics. I completely understand it, but once you see it, it will change you. I promise you.
I've never seen anything like it in my life. It's just, now I'm not as scared now. I mean, if I had the opportunity to see it again, I would probably take a lot longer of a look, to be honest with you, than running away. But I don't know. It's just so fascinating just looking at it. It's just like, I've never seen an animal like that before. And I hate saying animal, because I feel like they're not. When I say animal, I say it because they live on the forest and all that stuff. They have hair on their body, all that stuff. But I mean, like, I feel like they're not human, but like they're not all the way animal. It's just that their mannerisms, how they're wild and live out in the forest, is what makes them seem like an animal. But I feel like they got some human in them.
Yeah, and I can understand why you would say that. I definitely can understand. 2 questions I wanted to ask you. One, was there any smell that you noticed? And then 2, you said you knew it was male. Did you see private parts, or was it just the appearance of being a male?
Your first question, the smell, I'll be honest. I mean, in the forest, I mean, where I was, I mean, I've heard about a very terrible body odor, but on this one, on these 2, I didn't smell like a very bad body odor. It just kind of smelled like a wet dog, kind of. I guess you could say that, but it wasn't like a really like bad body odor scent. It just smelled like just a wild smell.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. Yeah, but
yeah, it wasn't like a bad scent. It's just like you could tell like they were wild animals where they smelled like just a wild smell. Just like just a wet dog, I guess you could say, but it wasn't like anything more than that. But I wasn't like up on them, so I couldn't like really get a good whiff because the wind was blowing away from me, so I couldn't.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, and it makes sense that you would smell that. You're relatively close, and it's odd. Sometimes people smell the smell, sometimes they don't. But that wild dog smell, it is kind of a wild. A lot of people describe it more of a wild smell. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. What about, did you see any private parts, or was it mainly, I know it's an odd question. I don't mean to be kind of a weirdo asking the question, but.
Yeah, the first one, I did see genitals on the first one. I did, because like it had matted hair all over its body, but you could see genitals. Like you could see like it had hair over his body, but not on his face. But like down there, his lower section, you could see genitals. I'm not gonna say like an erection type, but you could see it like not like hanging, but you could see genitals. Like you could see it.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. And that really lends. Well, it all lends to being a physical creature, but a lot of people have seen them. And I had a professional. Well, he's a wildlife guy, but he's professional, and he had seen one, and he had described that, and he said they were pretty small. which kind of would make sense. And I forgive me, audience, but it kind of makes sense. It would be kind of smaller. If you ever look at like an ape or a gorilla, the private parts don't match up with the size of the creature. You think they would be, well, I don't want to go into that, but you know what I mean? You would think it would be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Bigger. Sorry, man, this is going sideways, this whole conversation. I'm just curious about it because...
Not to say that about like body proportions, like how it like you thought it'd be bigger than what it was because it's a bigger animal. To be honest with you, like its whole body just seemed like not in proportion with itself, because like its head, like it had very thick what are they called, trapezius muscles, I guess what they call them in the shoulder, right? Like you couldn't tell it had a neck on them, but like you could see like it had a head, like a vertical football on its head. It would look like kind of
pointy,
like cone. Yeah, like not like pointy, but like a pointed top of the head, a little bit. Like you couldn't really see a neck on the first one, but you could it was just so big, like barrel chest, like it's arms long. It's crazy.
Yeah, they kind of look like, I remember when I described it, it said like a cartoon character. Everything's over exaggerated.
Yeah, like exactly. It's like a football player wearing pads on him, but covered in hair. Talking about like how the head like right on top of the shoulders, like not like a neck, you can't see it, but like it's like just placed on top of the shoulders. It's like that's kind of what it looks like if you think about it like a lot, but.
Yeah, it is, and they are like that. It's very over exaggerated. Like I was telling a guy down in the South, they call them no heads, and he was asking me, well, what do you mean no heads? And I said, well, when I talk to people in the South, I ask them that question. Why do you call them? They call them boogers, they call them no heads, they call them. And I asked him one time, why do you guys call them no heads? And he goes, you ever seen one walk away from you? And I said, no. And he said, if you ever see one walk away, it looks like they don't have a head. It's all shoulders and a little bump. And it almost looks like they don't have a head the way it rolls. Their shoulders roll forward. And so, a term down there in the South is they call them no heads. It's a fascinating account. It really is, Miguel. It's and I'm honored that this is the third time you're sharing it. I'm honored that you come on the show and talk about it.
It's nice talking to people that won't laugh at you or like say, oh, you didn't see anything as a bear. I'm like, no, it's not a bear.
Yeah, well, like I said, Miguel, it was my honor having you on. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing the encounter. I really enjoyed talking with you.
It was fun for me too.
Thanks, Miguel. And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. If you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. Until next time, everyone.